Hi, everybody. Welcome to Reading Between the Lines. I'm Sarah, and I'm joined today by my mom, Nicole. Hi, Mom.
Hi there. Hi, everybody.
And today we don't really have we do have a theme, but we're not going to talk about it just yet. We're going to dive into just what we've been reading lately at the end of April. And before we do that, I just wanted to say that this is the 39th episode that we have done this year. For the calendar year, because we started on May, I think it was May 2nd in 2024. And so we've had,
Happy anniversary to us.
yeah, happy birthday, happy 1 year birthday to us. So that's kind of fun. And yeah, let's just dive into our April reads. Why don't you go first?
Well, I feel like it's been a pretty good reading month. I usually average between 10 and 12 books, and I read 11 this month. I read 4 books in print format and 6 in digital format on my Kindle, and I listened to 1 audiobook. And in this chat, I will talk about the 3 books I enjoyed the most.
Okay.
And the first one is called Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont. And I was thinking this was going to be a book about the Claremont Hotel in Oakland, but I was wrong. It's set
Oh,
in the UK. So Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont is by an author named Elizabeth Taylor, not the actress. And it was published by Virago in 1971. So if you want to read this book, and I highly recommend that you do, you can easily get it at the library, or you could get a used copy. And as a
what's
matter
this?
of fact, it also has been made into a movie, which my husband, your father, and I watched last night. The
Oh,
movie
fun.
came out in the early 70s, and it stars the British actress Joan Plowright and a super handsome leading man. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, unfortunately. But anyway, the movie was really good. I think the book was better. But
Mm,
let me tell you the setup of the book. I found it was comedic at times, but it also was quite tragic. The plot is based on an elderly lady named Sarah Palfrey who moves into the Claremont Hotel in London. And the Claremont Hotel is not a vacation spot by any means, but it's a residence boarding hotel where the elderly go to finish out their lives. Well, they're not
mm.
allowed to die there. They can live there up to the point until they get where they really can't care for themselves, and then they go off to a nursing home.
Uh,
And as in many of these places, every day feels the same. Life is lonely and boring for most of the residents, and mealtime seems to be the high point of the day. And it's just a sad kind of bleak. It's not for poor elderly people, but just lonely, sad people whose relatives are disinterested or just visit them out of duty. They're in sad circumstance, but the group of people that live in the hotel become kind of a family because they're all they have.
yeah.
So the author has this really uncanny ability to bring the characters to life. And there was, quite a cast, an ensemble cast in this book. And I felt like I knew every single one of these characters intimately. The residents of Claremont have truly been put out to pasture, and everybody seems to have forgotten them. So, as bleak as this sounds, the author does manage to find humor in the situation, and I did find myself laughing out loud from time to time. So, one day, Sarah Palfrey is taking a walk in the neighborhood, and she takes a misstep and falls right in front of a young man's basement apartment. I guess he sees her. Basement apartments have those high windows, and he sees this poor lady take a fall. So he rushes out to come to her aid. He's very gentlemanly. His name is Ludovic Meyer. And they exchange names, and they both joke about how their names are equally ridiculous. And a friendship develops between them, which is mutually beneficial. Mrs. Palfrey has a grandson who could not care less about her, whom she's invited to visit. And everybody at the hotel refers to Desmond, the grandson, as the mythical grandson. That they don't believe she really has any relatives that care about her. But Ludo, as her new friend is called, agrees to be her grandson for the purposes of meeting all the other residents at the hotel. And there's a lot of funny, miscommunication that happens around this little subterfuge that the two of them are putting over on the other residents. But um, the author tells the story in a way that she captures the disdain that's felt for older people, especially their
Mm,
emotional needs, and also the despair felt by the aging as when they're truly alone. They're either widowed or their friends have just dropped out of sight. The family only sees them out of duty. And they feel like they're only just tolerated.
yeah.
And the book was marvelously written, and I think it might even end up being one of the best I've read all year. I don't want to make it sound like it was totally a downer, because it wasn't. There was humor in the description of the characters and their interactions with each other and other people. But basically, especially if you are at an age as I am, where you're getting older and you're wondering about, what are you going to do when you really can't manage to keep your home running on its own, with your under your own power, and you really need more assistance. It's kind of an eye-opening thought that
Mm,
it never occurs to you when you're in your 30s or your 40s, but once you hit 60, 70, it's a reality that is
yeah.
a topic that's possibly of interest to a lot of the people that listen to this podcast.
Would you call this book a slice of life book?
Yes, I think I would. It does portray a situation that many people find themselves in or will at some point find themselves in. So I think it's very relatable.
And it kind of goes through like the daily feelings and the daily activities that somebody is
Yes,
going through in that in
each of the elderly characters in the book has a very distinct personality. There's Mrs. Burton, who drinks way too much. There's Mr. Osborne that bores everyone to death with his slightly off-colored jokes.
Oh,
There's Mrs. Arbuthnot, who is actually a lovely woman, but is in such pain from arthritis that it makes her kind of cranky and snappish.
yeah.
Anyway, I truly,
Hmm.
really think that this book, even though it was written, what, 60 years ago,
Yeah.
would really be of interest to a lot of people, because the main issue is very contemporary.
Okay. Does the book have like does it end better than it started? Meaning for the characters?
I don't want to say because it would give
Okay.
away too much of the story.
I got it. Okay. Well, I didn't know it was a movie either, so I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, the
Um,
movie is a good way to experience it if you're not into reading one more book. Try the movie. The acting was great.
yeah. I just dove right into like, let's talk about books, but I want to pause just for a second to mention a few things. So you and I are both wearing matching green hoodies today out
Oh,
of coincidence, which is cute, twinning. And then also I wanted to ask you about like themes this month. Have you been craving any particular type of book, like wanting to read something really in particular?
yes, I have read, well, actually, when I think about it, my reading's been kind of all over the place. I've read some historical fiction. I've read some mystery thrillers that one of
Yeah.
which I'll talk about that was quite good. I've also read several romances. I don't know. I
Yeah.
tend to read the lighter books on my Kindle,
Okay.
just because it's easier if I'm reading at night, which is what happens a lot. I'll wake up during the night and I'll just want to pick up my Kindle and read for a little
Mhm.
while until I fall asleep
Yeah.
again. But yeah, I've kind of been all over the place this month.
I have been craving wanting to read funny mysteries. I don't want to read like the cozy, like cheapy paperback, like I don't know, like ones that are just too unbelievable and stupid. But
Right,
but I
right.
want to read something that's smart and funny, but also a mystery. And I'm having a really hard time to scratch that itch. I have some ideas of books I want to read, and I have been going to our local library book sale that happens every Saturday with Eva in tow. And I've really not found anything that I'm looking for, even backlist. So I welcome anyone to recommend something. I did pick up Finley Donovan is Killing It.
Yeah.
And I don't find it's good and I'm really enjoying it, but I don't find it like laugh out loud funny. It stresses me out. This book stresses me out so much because
She's
she's
kind of
like
harebrained. Yeah.
she's
Well,
an yeah.
as a matter of fact, I have a book that I'm going to recommend. It's my third book that I'm going to talk about,
Oh,
and
okay.
it might just fit the bill for you.
Yay. Okay. Well, so we'll table that for just a moment. So I needed to get into my books that I was gifted for Christmas, and it is April, so it's about time. And so I picked up Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. I don't remember if you or Aaron gave this to me, but
I
either
gave it
way.
to you. Weren't there
Okay.
two in the series?
Yes. Yes. I didn't get to that one yet, but this is a nice, quick little read. This is by Satoshi Yagisawa. So, Days at the Morisaki Bookshop is very cozy, heartfelt. It drops us right into the heart of the Jimbochi, Tokyo neighborhood, which I think is a real place, though I have failed to go there. It's known for having only secondhand books, and it's just rows and rows and streets upon streets of secondhand bookshops. So if you've been there, tell me all about it. And this introduces us to Takako, and she is a young woman reeling from heartbreak. She is really devastated, and it kind of puts her into like this spiral of depression. She's never been a reader, but her life is just completely falling apart. She's so depressed that she just doesn't even bother to go to work or be able to support or care for herself. I mean, it's pretty dire. Um, Okay, so she finds herself living above her family's little bookshop, which is surrounded by super dusty shelves and stories waiting to be discovered. What unfolds is a very quiet slice of life, beautiful reminder that healing doesn't happen overnight, that books can be portals to new beginnings, and that sometimes the simple act of just being present in your life can really change things. So this is for anybody who really does need permission in their life right now to slow down or breathe and maybe rediscover themselves versus what they have been trying to be, if that makes sense. So Takako is 25, and the Morisaki bookshop was owned by her great uncle. Her uncle currently owns it, he's a bit estranged from the family, but he reaches out and says, your mom says that you're down on your luck. Why don't you just like come live with me and you can work part-time at the bookstore. So she does. And like as I said in the backstory, her boyfriend takes her out for dinner and reveals that he's going to marry somebody else. Like he's engaged, he's been in this other relationship, and he's done with her. And of course, that's deeply devastating and shocking. So anyway, this is a book that's really more about the neighborhood. We are introduced to the neighborhood by Takako and then her uncle Satoru, but this becomes a story more about the characters and the shoppers that frequent these bookstores. And each bookstore actually also has its own specialty. If you're looking for something very historical or nonfiction or memoirs or historical children's books, even like just very interesting collection and variety of books. There is a second book to this that I have not read that explores some of the other side characters, and I think it's a continuation of a series. And again, like I said, this was just while this didn't fully hold my attention, like this is not a page turner, it's something that you can pick up and come back to. It is very much a nice reminder that you can pause just for yourself and take the time that you need to heal. So, yeah.
So ultimately, does our main character, snap out of it and start
She
interacting with other people and finding meaning in life again?
she does. She does become addicted to sleeping, which I guess is something that does happen to people who are in deep depression.
Yes.
And eventually she swaps that escapism from life out by reading. And
Oh,
then from there, she starts to be hungry for more of these backlist authors. And then she starts to explore the neighborhood looking for other books within the series that she enjoys. And then she meets more people. And so she does kind of come out of her shell. Telling you all of this is not a spoiler because there's much more to the book. But
okay.
yeah, it's a nice little
Well,
journey slice of
I'm
life.
glad you read it. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. What's next for you?
Well, I read a Goodreads calls it a thriller. I'd say it's more of a mystery than a thriller. I don't know why.
Okay.
Thrillers, I guess, are a big deal right now, and so book publishers want to get on the thriller bandwagon and sell books, so they call books that aren't technically in
Mm,
that category, call them a
I
thriller.
got duped by that this month too, but I'll talk about that later.
Oh, so this is more of a mystery. The author of the book is called Witness 8. And the author is Steve Kavanaugh, who's an author I've read many times. This book was published August 1st, 2024 by Atria. And I found it to be kind of a twisty psychological mystery, not a thriller. You know, if you go into it thinking it's going to be a thriller, you're going to be disappointed. It's a mystery. So Steve Kavanaugh writes a lot of books that have a kind of a legal twist. He wrote a book called 13, and it was a book. The subtitle of the book was where the serial killer is on the jury. It was really
Wow.
anyway. His books are great. He has a series called the Eddie Flynn series, and this was one of the most recent book in the Eddie Flynn series. I don't think you have to read these books in order, which I have not,
Okay.
and it was just fine. So here's the setup. Growing up as a wealthy Manhattanite, Ruby now works as a house cleaner in the neighborhood she once lived in. To say Ruby is bitter about this is an understatement. And when she witnesses a murder, she hatches the most diabolical plan for revenge on her neighbors. Eddie Flynn, who is our main character, is a defense attorney. And what's interesting about Eddie is that he is a former con man. And it add that this element, I mean, he's very cagey, very clever, and nobody
Mhm.
puts anything over on Eddie Flynn. It adds a really clever element to the story,
Wow.
this main character. He's hired to defend the innocent man that Ruby has accused and claims to have witnessed committing this murder. And things get really complicated in a very significant subplot when Eddie gets into trouble with corrupt local cops and a bounty is put on his head. And there are all these different assassins that are all vying for the money to kill off our Eddie Flynn. So this is going on alongside this other plot where Ruby, this deranged person, has accused someone falsely of murder. So there's a really colorful cast of assassins.
Oh, wow.
And one of them, the best one, is called Mr. Christmas.
Oh
And
my
he
God.
is the most dapper, devious, and deadly villain I think I have ever read. And I mean, his actions are absolutely horrific. And yet he's got this personality that, you can kind of get on board with the way he's thinking, at least. even if you don't support what he does. So
Okay.
the book was really a wild ride. It was a page turner, and I love a book where the plot moves along.
Yeah.
This particular book, if it doesn't go into great depth of character analysis, and of course, all of the characters are completely implausible, every single one of them. But
Yeah.
it was a fun book. I read it quickly, and I really enjoyed it. And I'll look forward to reading more things by Steve Kavanaugh.
What was the title of this one again?
Witness 8.
And is this the backlist or is this a new one?
It's new. It was published last August.
Oh, how fun.
So it's not brand new. You could probably, I don't know if it's out in paperback. You could certainly probably, but at this point, get it at the library. You could probably even find a used copy at Pango or one of the other used book sites.
Nice. Okay. All right. That sounds like a good one. I want to maybe pick that one up. That sounds fun. Okay. My brother gave me a book for Christmas called Strange Practice. This is a Dr. Greta Helsing book number 1 by Vivian Shaw, who is an extraordinarily talented writer, British. And this is a good supernatural mystery with a smart and capable heroine at the center. So Strange Practice by Vivian Shaw is all about Dr. Greta Helsing, where Greta is, yes, from that line of Helsings. She runs a medical practice for all the creatures that go bump in the night. So no longer are the Von Helsing or Van Helsings trying to kill vampires. They are now treating them as patients. So that's interesting. So Greta has inherited her family's highly specialized and highly peculiar medical practice.
Yeah, talk
She
about
has seriously, and, honestly though, or not honestly, but in the book, she does have to, she has too much of a caseload. So she has to send patients out to another doctor that does similar stuff, which is like, oh, well, okay. So apparently there's anyway. Okay. Dr. Helsing treats the undead for a host of ills like vocal strain in banshees, arthritis in wraiths. Wraiths, by the way, are like those creepy things in Lord of the Rings. And then entropy in mummies. She even was wanting to get a 3D printer to print new plastic bones for mummies so that they could have more range of mobility. And so she's barely making ends meet because I mean, do these creatures have money? No, they do not. So this is not a sustainable business. And yet it has sustained itself somehow. So if you can get beyond that, it's, you can't. This is not a funny book either, by the way, but describing it.
Yes, it is.
It's very funny. Although she barely is making ends meet, this is just the quiet, supernatural, adjacent life that Greta has been groomed for since childhood. Also, the undead, she calls them the I don't know. Erin knows what it is. It's like you're the different alive, something like the living differently. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
So the mystery part, there is a sect of murderous monks that emerge, and they are killing human and undead Londoners alike. So it's all over the news. Greta has to use her unusual skills to stop the cult if she hopes to save her practice and her friends and her life. There are 2 different sets of vampires. And when you are a doctor who makes 0 money in London, it is very helpful to have vampire friends, apparently, because they are really, really rich. And so that's helpful. And they kind of bail her out and help her with things. There is also a family friend who is a demon, who is kind of like the father figure to Greta now that her father has passed. And he plays a very central role in all of this. What I didn't like about this book is that these types of creatures and monsters, they're barely described and their characteristics are not explained very well.
You wanted more detail.
I did. And also, her central group of friends who are helping her along the way with this mystery, their backstory is not really supported enough for me. I liked them at all. I loved all of the characters, very interesting, but I just wanted a little bit more. Especially if you have vampires who've been around for over 500 years, like, there's probably a lot of interesting stories there.
I'm
Anyway,
sure.
you'll need to get out your Oxford dictionary for this one because there are a lot of what I call $5 words in here that you'll need to look up, and also a lot of British colloquialisms that I didn't understand, so I had to look those up. And often, actually, I was asking Alexa to help me get through this book. So, but
The
I
author of
thoroughly,
the book sounds like they have just an amazing imagination. They would be a very interesting interview, I think.
actually, that is a very good idea. Thank you. I like that. Yeah, I think so too. I really enjoyed this, and I actually would love to read the next book in the series, and so I think that I shall, but I'm not in a hurry for that, but I will definitely pick it
It
up.
might be that as the author picks up
Hmm.
steam and gets feedback on this first book, that maybe
Yeah.
the other characters will be more fleshed out, if you'll pardon that.
Oh, mom. Yes,
No,
I
but really,
agree.
maybe there'll be
Yeah.
more detail and backstory provided in future
Um,
books.
what I will say about all three of the books that I'm going to talk about today, and it's interesting to think about the first book that you mentioned, there is definitely a found family theme, which I am discovering is really a trend. Well, I mean, the hotel old people book that you just mentioned, that's a bit found family too, even though
Oh,
that was written
absolutely.
in the
Definitely.
60s or 70s. But still, I think that theme is super prevalent right now, or at least it seems that people are becoming more attracted to that type of theme. So,
It's a favorite trope or theme of mine. I really love a found
yeah.
family book.
What is your third book?
Well, this is the book that I think you might actually enjoy.
Mm, I'm
Um,
ready.
it's called We Solve Murders by Richard Osman, published.
Oh, I almost bought this, but okay. So, do you have a hard copy or is it on
I
Kindle?
do, and I will be more than happy to pass it on to you because I think you'll like it. So, We Solve
Yay!
Murders by Richard Osman, published September 17th, 2024, by Pamela Dorman Books. So, here's the thing. Richard Osman is a hugely popular author right now. He's
Oh,
been
yeah.
coming out reliably every year with a book in his Thursday Murder Club series.
And that's a great series. I should probably go back to
It
that too.
is, and you'd probably really enjoy this. This book is the start of a new series for him. And I don't know what it's going to be called. I'm going to call it the Amy Wheeler series because she's one of the main characters that we're following.
Okay.
And I looked it up. I looked up several reviews, and they all say, Richard Osman's coming out with a new series, but nobody said what we're going to refer to this series as. So not the Thursday Murder Club. It's a whole new start for him. So here's the setup. We have Steve Wheeler, who is a retired cop, and he lives in a quiet English village, and he loves his routine. He's retired. He's not wanting to get into any kind of police investigative work anymore at all. His his favorite things are pub trivia night. He loves his circle of friends, and he loves his cat who's called Trouble. And he has no plans to go anywhere anytime soon except to the pub for trivia night. So he's got a daughter-in-law who he's very close to. Her name is Amy Wheeler. And it's interesting. He seems like he's closer to his daughter-in-law, Amy, than he is to his own son, who's kind of a vague, cerebral person who's not around very much because he's always off making money. So
Hmm.
Amy checks on Steve all the time. They talk on the phone. She's very solicitous of his welfare, and she's extremely fond of him and vice versa. So Amy has a job as an elite bodyguard, and she's hired to protect really important and well-known people. And fate brings Amy and Steve together. they join forces to outsmart a very dangerous and very cagey money smuggler who has framed Amy for a series of murders. And Amy's now being hunted by these assassins who are determined to bump her off. And
That's a whole lot of trouble that she's gotten herself into.
she's in a big hot mess. But the woman that she's been hired to protect is a very famous elderly author named Rosie. I forget Rosie's last name, but anyway, Rosie is in her 80s, we think, but she's very glamorous, and her personal philosophy is that age is fluid, and
Okay.
she doesn't admit to being in her 80s by any means, and her personality is that of like a 25-year-old. So she's a lot of fun. She is hilariously funny. She's fabulously rich, and the assassins have all been told that under no circumstances is Rosie to be killed, only Amy. So Rosie knows she's safe, and there's a lot of hilarious dialogue on, the choices they make.
Yeah.
And they are flying all over the place. They fly to Santa Lucia. And these assassins are following them, and occasionally one of them will make a try at killing Amy, and she always comes out on top of the situation. So she's really a badass, and a lot of fun to read about. So anyway, Amy talks her father-in-law, Steve, into coming to join her. And he doesn't want to leave his cozy little town and his pub nights, but he does. And he and Rosie, surprisingly, the 80-year-old, really hit it off.
Why not?
And she's always taking him out for drinks. And Amy would say, well, why would you do that? He doesn't drink. Well, he does now.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Anyway, there's lots of characters in the book, which is the only downside.
I've read that. That was the only thing that scared me off from this
there's
book.
an awful lot of characters in the book.
Oh.
But there's lots of twists and turns, and the plot moves swiftly. There's so much witty banter. I think you might like it because
Good.
These people are funny when they talk to each other, and I found it very entertaining, and I was completely on board with the story, and I cannot wait for the next one in the series.
Also, Thursday Murder Club is a TV show. It's coming out. I don't know if it's already out.
Yes.
It has Pierce Brosnan
book in that series, and truth be told, Same. I think I like this one better.
That's good. I kind of feel I liked the concept. I mean, I don't know what's wrong. I think my inner child is actually an inner grandparent, but I love books that represent like much older people, and I think that's my end goal is I aspire to be retired and but I liked the idea of like the setup for that series of being in a convalescent type of home, but I got a little bored with just like the village scenery.
Well, they are all over the world. They're flying to Dublin. They went to this tropical island. They're all over the place in this book. Fun. Because the wealthy authoress is funding, flights on private planes and the best hotels. So I love it. I think you'd really like it.
I'm gonna pick it up. So
I'll pass it on to you. Don't buy it.
Yeah, I'm all right. Yes, you have it. I'm definitely gonna read that. It's gonna be on my list.
What's your third book?
My next one is a Book of the Month club. So it's a fairly new release. Actually, it's an extremely new release. I think it came out in February. It is by Eowyn Ivey, and it's called Black Woods, Blue Sky. I had to cough. Okay. So this is a story about survival and resilience and also the brutal beauty of nature. It is billed as like a thriller / fairy tale, which I was, of course, like, oh, those are my things. It is neither of these things.
What's wrong with these publishers? Why can't they get the genres right?
I don't know. I mean, I think Book of the Month. it's contemporary fiction, which to be fair, I think that Book of the Month described it as contemporary fiction or literary fiction or whatever that is, which is never a genre that goes well for me. But I'm trying to broaden my horizons. And the premise sounded really interesting, but it's from the publisher description that I got this like mystery thriller kind of vibe from it. Anyway, this is this is a really dark, sad book. I'm not selling this very well. Some people are going to love this book. So I'll just explain what's happening. We have like a young woman who's maybe 23 or 24. She has a 5-year-old daughter that she's not a good mother. She is a waitress. She leaves her kid alone all the time so that she can go and work. She's not really able to put food on the table. They're in Alaska, and she meets, so Birdie is the young woman. She meets a quiet and scarred, literally, man named Arthur, who happens to rescue the 5-year-old from wandering around in the forest, who lost because her mother is not paying attention to her. And Birdie sees a chance at something more with Arthur. And she really is craving a different life. She knows very well that this current life that she's existing in with her daughter is just it's not good for anybody. But against everyone's advice, she ends up following Arthur and moving with him to an extremely remote cabin in the middle of nowhere, like off of the tundra in Alaska. Because Birdie really wants to feel like wild and close to nature and just not have all this pressure of being a mom and having to work all the time. So there again, she just wants to escape her life, though she does love her child very much. Isolation really has a way of revealing the truth. And so Birdie soon realizes that Arthur is not just battling the brutal realities of the wild. She is trapped with a man who is not who she thought he was. This is the part where we go from like survival and deep wilderness and atmosphere to magical realism. And I'm not going to spoil, this isn't a spoiler. Arthur is not fully human. It's just going to leave it there.
Well,
And so of course you want to understand like, well, what is happening here? There's a lot of danger in this book. It's very I was going to say disappressing. It's disappointing and depressing for me. Super sad, but it did stick with me. I thought a lot about it after I had read it. I want more charming accounts of like living in the wilderness in Alaska. And again, this is more about a very sad bond between a child and a mother. This is about loving someone who can't love you back. This could be for you if you like that type of topic.
now I have to observe that many times you have your reasons for not liking a book is because the characters were super unlikable.
Yeah,
And
they make bad choices. I hate that.
well, from what you've described, it's hard for me not to be judgy about
Yeah.
the Birdie, the woman who is making all these terrible decisions.
I have a hard time saying something positive about her.
Well,
So
it does sound dark, and it sounds like it just wasn't. Well, the
it
ending
also,
doesn't sound like it was what you had hoped for.
the
And
ending had some closure to it. And this is not necessarily, well, okay. What I can say is that there was some closure, and I think people would really enjoy the ending. However, it's still sad, and there is no explanation either as to why Arthur was the way he was. It just is accepted that he is different, and we leave it there. Like, what? Come on. Like, how did he do, how is this possible? Anyway, I will also say about Arthur, and this was interesting, that the way that the author wrote his character or his dialogue or things from his perspective, because he is not fully human, he also speaks in a different grammatic way. And I will say that it is always present tense. He talks about the past in present tense, and he talks about the future in present tense, because he doesn't observe time like a human would. So, if this intrigues you, pick it up. But otherwise, it's sad. You can move along. On that note, let's talk about book clubs.
Yes, that's our deep dive this time. We're
Yep.
going to talk a little bit more about book clubs. Let's start with, have you ever or do you belong to a book club, Sarah?
I have not. I don't think I ever have. I know that in the past, like within our kind of friend and family group, we did try to start one and it didn't really stick together. Though I have certainly done like buddy reads with you. But that's about it. So like from my experience, they don't, oh, I can't, like, there's no consistency.
Well, I have a quilting blog, and I have a lot of readers that also enjoy reading books and talking about books, and many of them belong to book clubs.
Yeah.
So I threw the question out to my readers, have you ever belonged to one? Do you belong to one? Did you like it? Did you not like it? And why? And I got some really interesting responses. Some of the positive things about book clubs is that often if you belong to a book club, the selection is going to be a book that's outside of your usual genre choice.
Right. Which for me is always, it's always
This
difficult
could
though.
be a plus or it could be a total
True.
minus, because if you read a book that's outside of your typical book choice and you really enjoy it, and there's
It's
an
wonderful.
interesting discussion with, from people who have read the book and enjoyed it or perhaps didn't enjoy it, it's really nice to get that perspective. And it's also interesting to be exposed to something and discover, oh, I didn't know that I really like to read climate fiction or cozy fantasies.
That's true. You like to read climate fiction. We know that now. Right.
Well,
Maybe.
from time to time, yes, I do. I have.
Okay.
So another positive for being in a book club is that if you get members that read the book and have opinions, there can be a really lively discussion, particularly if there are differing points of view. That's always healthy, I think, to have a dialogue where
I'll
not
enjoy that very
everything is
much.
the same. And
It's very
another,
satisfying as well to read a book and then share that with someone else who's read it. So you can like
yes,
share
it is.
observations.
I
I
mean,
also find that I tend to miss sometimes main concepts or like main points in
that's
a
true
book.
too.
Yeah.
A lot of times someone will bring up something. I read a lot of book reviews, and somebody will bring up something and I'll think, I didn't even, how did I miss that?
Right. Same.
And so it just brings an added element to your experience of the book. And the third thing that it could be positive, it could be negative, and we'll talk about that in a minute, is the opportunity to socialize with other people that hopefully
Absolutely.
are like-minded in that, you all enjoy books and you can get together and enjoy people who think kind of the same way you do.
Mhm. So I would love to hear more comments from like your readers from the blog, like what their experience has been. I have some stats and facts as well, so I wanted to kind of see if they were similar in what your real people, your real readers actually
Well,
said.
I have a lot of cons about belonging to a book club too.
Oh,
So we'll talk. Why don't you give your stats and then I'll tell you some of the cons that my readers shared.
so engaging in regular discussions obviously is going to provide an intellectual stimulation and also a sense of purpose to have like a group or a community that you belong
Yes.
to, contributing positively to your mental health and well-being. So in general, I think it's a great idea, especially the shift from 2020. I can see a big, well, I not only can I see it, but there has been um, a a big move for people to join book clubs. You also may have noticed online, everybody and their mom, pun intended, has a book club now. So, RuPaul has a book club, Oprah, Reese, the Bush girl from the Today Show. Like everybody's got a Jenna, sorry. Everybody's,
Jenna
yeah.
Bush.
And they all, of course, have different kind of themes, but you can find now, whether that's a local group or a virtual group, or even something like that's a general theme of like, if you are, into LGBTQ plus, then RuPaul's book club might be for you. Or if you just want to expand your horizons with diversity, you'll find something for you.
Yeah.
And of course, book subscriptions that are themed are kind of in that same genre, if that's something.
Yes, there are several bookstores that have. You can pick the mystery subscription, or you can pick. I think it's the bookstore in Thomasville Books, I think it's called.
Yeah.
The owner's mom is somebody who likes romance, but she doesn't want any kind of steamy romance. And so she's got a little book club subscription that has books that are not steamy at all, for people who just don't want bad language or any kind of.
I think also that there is an adaptability here. So the shift is really more predominantly virtual now. And book clubs that are more diverse are much more accessible. So you can have continued participation and connection despite physical distancing. Or like me, I live in a pretty rural area and I don't even know if I have like a local book club around me.
I think the virtual book clubs really took off during COVID, when people couldn't get together face to face, and people liked it so much that they continued having the virtual meetings.
I think it's a nice idea, because then you can pour yourself a glass of wine. You could be in your jammies, and you're just at home still. Like there's some
you don't have to clean
there.
your house to get ready for a whole bunch of ladies to come in.
Yeah, or make appetizers. So predominantly the demographic tends to be approximately 80% of book club participants being female. And a significant portion of them, of course, but not surprising to me, a significant portion of these women are over the age of 45. But I believe, and I'm getting some of these stats from like public libraries online.org and Business Insider. What was my point? Educational background. 63% of these women in the book clubs have advanced degrees, indicating a higher level of education among participants. And also women over 45 are among the most avid readers, because reading provides them with relaxation and escapism.
They're not as busy. I mean, they may be working women, but they don't have little kids hanging on their shirt tails, calling for their attention or needing to be driven somewhere. So, when your kids are older and more independent, you have more time for yourself.
That's true. In my 30s, when I had Eva, I didn't really read. I didn't have time. I couldn't stick with a book. I was either always interrupted or just too damn tired to be paying attention to what I was trying to read. So that makes perfect sense to me. I also want to mention book purchasing power, I think, is also a main factor here. Books can be expensive.
Yep.
$25 for a new hardback, even $30. I wanted to buy, maybe it was that Richard Osman book, the hardback, the new one. It was $30. And I was like, no, because that's like a price of lunch nowadays as well. So, I gotta choose my battles here. So book purchasing power, the demographic constitutes a substantial segment of book buyers between the ages of 44 and 62. And they have, of course, a bit more established income to make more purchases of new books. But also Gen Z women are following very closely behind in terms of participating in book clubs. So interesting to know what your readers commented about.
Very interesting. Well, a lot of people shared that they've been in book clubs for decades, and it was a huge, huge part of their lives, and they couldn't imagine not having this book club to look forward to.
Yeah.
So that being said, a lot of people said book clubs, meh, not for me.
Yeah.
Because their experience was that if they were told to read a book that they weren't really interested in, they felt it was like school, and that
Mm.
those were hours they would never get back because they had spent them doing this thing that they didn't really enjoy. And it was just like blah. I want to read to be entertained. And if it goes out of my head immediately, I don't care. I was entertained when I read it and I don't need to talk about it. So book
Yeah.
clubs are not for a certain segment of readers. The other biggest complaint, and I totally get this because I was in a book club and this was my experience. A lot of people don't bother to read the book. They just turn
Yeah.
off and they haven't read the book. So like, why are you there?
And
What
they
do
have
you
nothing to contribute.
They have nothing to contribute. And this leads to the other biggest complaint that I got was that the purpose of the meeting did not seem to be book discussion, but for the food that was served. And the
Yeah.
food and the socialization totally took precedence over any kind of meaningful dialogue about the book, which
I can see that.
I get it. I belonged to a gourmet supper club once. Your dad and I
Yes.
really enjoyed it, and we would get together. The host would pick the theme for the evening, and everybody would be assigned certain dishes. Usually, it was a cuisine or a country that we were looking into, and it was great fun. But that's kind of what it was all about. It was about the food and not about anything else. Whereas if you've got a book club and you're trying to just pick a book that's set in France and then you're going to have a brunch with omelets and, you know, whatever else you'd have for a French themed brunch, that's definitely going to overshadow any kind of conversation about the book.
What else? Anything else that stood out to you?
Well, a lot of people said that they do a FaceTime or Zoom book club meeting, and there's no food and no house to clean before people come.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read the book, don't dial
Don't
in.
show up.
Yeah, don't show
Yeah.
up. And another
Um,
option that was mentioned that kind of appealed to me is that people would get together at a coffee shop or a local diner, and they would not be there gathering to discuss a particular book, but each person would take a moment and share whatever they're reading at the moment.
I like that. That
So
sounds
I
interesting.
kind of did too. Just meet a group of four friends for lunch, and everybody talks about what they're reading right now.
You
And
know,
it's a great
that's
way
a
to
great
be
idea.
exposed to, other genres. And if somebody is really selling it well, then maybe you'll give it a try and be surprised.
Do you do buddy reads with your friend Sue? Our friend Sue?
We have done buddy reads. Our taste in books is not,
The same.
totally in sync.
Yeah.
But I'm always trying to sell her on certain books, and she has read some of the books that I've recommended, and she has enjoyed them. We did
Okay.
one buddy read that was just a disaster.
Oh.
I had purchased a book. Well, I had asked our local library. A lot of libraries have a deal where if you tell them you'd really be interested in reading a book, they will buy it. And
Yeah.
then it gets sent directly to you and you read it and then you give it back to the library so other people
Yep.
can have a chance to read it as
On
well.
the honor system. Yep.
Yeah. It was a book called I think it was called Ordinary People by
Mm.
Sally Rooney. And I had asked the library to buy a copy and never heard another thing about it. So I bought a copy of the book myself. And then lo and behold, the library sent me another copy. So I said, Sue, this is a perfect opportunity. I got two copies of this book. It's a short book. You read it and I'll read it. And at the time we were meeting to take walks in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about it when we're on our walks. So we both read this book. We both absolutely loathed it. So, I mean, yeah, we had a nice animated discussion, but it was again like I'll never
Yeah.
get I'll never get that time back. But
Well, One thing I wanted to mention is something that I wanted to introduce to our group. Fairly soon, we have a Patreon that's going to launch for this podcast, where we're going to have some like behind the scenes, a special bonus content. And one of the ideas I had was, if there's interest, a quarterly book club, but the book club, we can vote. Everybody gets, there's a poll before we just pick. I'm not picking the book. Like, we all are
See,
going to
that
pick
was
the
another
book.
thing that was interesting is there's a lot of different ways the book selection can be chosen. It can be done democratically where everybody votes, or people in the club can take turns picking a book and then everybody else is subjected to it.
I have joined in the past a Patreon book club, and it's not, it's like $3 or something a month to be a part of this particular gal's. She's a book influencer. Her name is Emily Fox, and she's Canadian.
Oh, yes. I watched her YouTube videos.
Yeah, I think she's a former law student, a recovering law student. Anyway, she's very intelligent. Love her to death. But her whole thing was, if you want to participate, we are choosing classics. We are choosing classic books. We're not reading anything contemporary. We can all vote. And then each year was a theme. I think, there was also like a sci-fi year where she was just, we're only reading sci-fi this year. It's just 4 books a year. I didn't want to read any of those classics. A lot of them are also like from French Canadian authors that I didn't know anything about. So I kind of lost interest there, but I liked the concept very, very much. So yeah. Well,
I think that's a great idea.
I think so too. So if you are interested, anyone in the Patreon book club with me and Mom, let me know. I will talk about it a bit more in May, which is just a few days away. But anyway, so that's something that we can discuss, and we can also have a group discussion as to what kind of theme we want to choose. Do we want to choose different seasonal themes and so on for each quarter? So stay tuned.
I like that idea.
I do too. I think it'll be fun. I love also books that involve food lately because I've been on a diet. And so I'm really enjoying books that describe food of some sort. There is a book that I want to pick up. I can't remember the title of it right now, but it's a mystery series that revolves around I think it's a Vietnamese restaurant, and a young heroine who, works there with her grandparents. So I'm looking forward to that. Like Death by Dumplings, I think is the title. So again, if you have any books as well that are not only are they mystery and funny, but mystery and involve food, please reach out because I'm having a mood here. So yeah. Okay.
Well, one thing we didn't talk about in terms of book clubs is that it really is a nice way to meet people.
That's true.
Even if you don't stick with the book club, if you go for like 6 months and you find the books aren't to your taste.
Yeah.
My experience with my one book club experience was a neighborhood group, and we had just moved to the little town where we live now, and I didn't know anybody. And I found out when I met one of my neighbors, she very kindly said, a group of us who live in the neighborhood have a book club. We'd love to have you come. And it was such a nice way to meet neighbors. And
it's a great idea.
For that aspect, I really did enjoy meeting the ladies. Then we moved into another neighborhood and I stopped going, but it was there was some book discussion. There was always, coffee and some kind of a dessert, and they were all lovely. So
I know that Miriam, our friend Miriam, used to be in a book club. I don't know if she still is, but
she is. She's very active.
I remember.
In the book club. Yep. And she embraces reading books that are not books that she would have personally selected.
That's true. I got to hand it to her. She's very good about that.
And she's read a lot of books she never in a million years would have picked, and has gotten something out of them, and has really enjoyed the discussions that ensue when she meets up with her group. So she's a success story.
And when she has these, at least I've only been able to observe the ones that have been held at her home, the whole house is packed. There's tons of ladies in that living room, and they're all having a lively discussion. So again, like she's found a group of people that, are wanting to read the book, have a way to intelligently communicate well about their thoughts about the book, because that can sometimes be really difficult too, is
Yeah.
like putting, your thoughts and observations into
It's
words.
hard to find your perfect group. Your
It
brother,
is.
who lives in Dublin, Ireland, would love to join a book club.
Yeah.
And he's found that they're kind of discriminatory in that they only want other lesbians that are in, it's a lesbian book club, or it's a
Well,
book club that
Aaron does not fit into that category.
only sci-fi. And he just
Oh,
wants to meet people. And he did have one group that he met. It wasn't really a book club, but it was a meetup kind of a thing, and
yeah.
everybody was to bring a book that they were going to try to sell, not for money, but to discuss. And it was a giveaway, a book trade. And so
Oh,
if you told, a good enough story about your book and somebody else was interested, then you would give them that book, and hopefully there'd be somebody else there who had a book that you were interested in that they would then give to you. So it was
kind
a
of like
book.
a white elephant party in a way, but that's
Yeah,
cool.
people did talk about the book because they were trying to, convey that it was interesting to somebody else. But it wasn't not a properly organized book club in the way, and you'd get
Mm.
different people every time. It wasn't always the same group of people. So
Oh, that just reminded me of that movie as well. I guess it was a book as well, the Jane Austen book club. That was a fun, weird setup with all the characters were really very different walks of life. I think
yeah,
Hugh Dancy was in the movie, and Hugh played this like very cerebral, but like he was a cyclist, and like he was in this women's book club. And anyway, there was a bit of a romance there too. He was a cutie back then, but it's fun when you have like very different personalities, but consistently showing up. That's
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
So anyway, okay. Well, I think that wraps us up for today.
Yes, this was a great discussion. I'm looking forward to next time.
Me too. We'll have to pick a different deep dive theme.
We
So,
will. We'll be thinking about that.
okay, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. And if you have suggestions, comments, or themes, or whatever feedback about your experience
Yes,
with the
we'd
book
love
club,
feedback.
please reach out. Email is podcast@SARAREED.co. All right, take care. Bye, Mom.
Bye.